So this is Family Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with Stephanie Fee. And I want to welcome you to the Family Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here. I'm great. I'm great.
We want to let people know we've got your link up, the Wild Larynx. How do you pronounce that?
Larynx.
Larynx, the
It's
Wild
like
Larynx.
it's like your throat.
Dot oh, okay. Dot
Mhm.
CARRD.co. That will be fully clickable, so you won't have to worry about typing it when we're published on all the platforms on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch that we're live right now. Also, want to let people know that we are a featured podcast on Newsly. You can see that little icon up there. You can listen to the podcast on that channel for free if you use coupon code GHOST. That's the audio version of the podcast. You'll be able to check that out later tonight. We are a featured podcast on that platform. And want to let people know that we're going to be talking about in this episode is collaborative ghostwriting and understanding the range of ghostwriters and what exactly to expect. So that's like the main focus of the episode. But again, want to talk to you about that and maybe give a brief background of your story to kind of introduce yourself. And maybe, yeah, at the beginning, you could tell maybe like what motivates you the most, or why do you do what you do?
Yeah. So my story in terms of how I became a ghostwriter, uh, it all started with my grandmother telling me to read, read, read so that I could become a great writer. And my other grandma would sit with me and actually write with me. So my two grandmas, they really put me in this direction, kind of unknowingly until a couple of years ago when someone kind of dropped out of the sky in a way and read something that I wrote and asked me, "Can I hire you as my ghostwriter?" So that was how it all began. And I said, "Yeah," because this was a childhood dream, a young adult dream that I, at the time, thought was not possible. So I went on this whole other ride of all these other experiences, entrepreneurship, um, working as a leader in the wine industry, lots of different things, film editing. And I always wondered, what am I going to do with this compilation of experiences? And now it all makes sense because I write with really great leaders and executives who want to make a difference in the world. And my lived experiences, while different than theirs, also help me look through a lot of different perspectives and angles to see them for who they truly are and the kind of uniqueness that lives inside of them, sometimes that they don't even see. And so I do a lot of that in the work as a ghostwriter, which we're going to talk about.
That's interesting. So somebody found your something you had published, and then wanted to like your style, and then asked you to ghostwrite, and that's your first experience, and somebody asking you officially to ghostwrite.
Well, it's a little bit longer story than that. I met her when I had nothing. I had nothing, no business in writing. I was a sales leader in the wine industry at the Roxy Hotel in New York
Mm.
City. And it just so happened that that evening I decided to have some oysters and wine at the bar instead of stay in my room before work day the next day. Met her, and then I had learned about her story and what her life was like. And I just was really interested in her as a person. And
Mm.
we became close through the pandemic while not even, we only met once. And she was writing a book. So she told me she was writing a book. And I just wanted to read it because her
Oh,
story was so moving. It's like, please share this with me. So when she shared it with me, she asked me for feedback. And that's something that, will come up later in our discussion, I'm sure. And what I learned in my road in entrepreneurship, which was a past life of mine, I mean, I'm still an entrepreneur, but a different startup company that I was working to build, was that feedback is really a gift. And when someone will actually spend the time to give it to you in a meaningful, honest way, that makes your work better. So I did that. I sat with her work, and I sat with what I know, how she told her story to me, and the voice that I heard when she was just speaking naturally, and how moving that was. And then when I read the book, I felt that there was a disconnect. And so I was honest with her about that. And then she wrote back and gave her a few just insights that I thought, and not having any, I had no professional interest in this,
Mm.
pure passion and love for her. So she said, "I don't know exactly how to do that." And I said, "Okay, well, do you want me to show you? Because I'm better at showing sometimes. Do you want me to show
Mhm.
you a little bit, like what it like feels like and looks like through words, to put yourself in the story rather than like tell the story?" "Yeah, yeah, could you that'd be cool, yeah, no problem." I asked for permission, which I think is really important when we're giving feedback, like, "Do you actually want me to
Mhm.
do this?" So she did, so I wrote it, I just was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is really fun," and then she read it and said, "Whoa, that sounds like me. Do you think you could ghostwrite my
So
book?" So, yeah, and we went on this
that's interesting.
beautiful, yeah, and it was this really unexpected, so I went after it with complete naivete, from the viewpoint of, if someone were helping me write a book, what would I want them to do? And that
Mhm.
was it. And the experience became so much
So
more
did
than,
you have a lot of
sorry, the
did you have a lot of back and forth where you, like where you, like, interviewed her, or did you just read and then interpret? Or did you have, like, an ongoing kinda, you know, kinda collaborative effort? Or did she, like, "Well, like, now that you I get that you feel me, so I'll give you permission to kinda look at what I write and kinda rework it," or was it something that was done, I don't know how you do that. Maybe you can describe that process.
yeah, well, this particular client was very impressive. She had written the full manuscript, so I was just, like, really celebrating the fact that she did that. So it was
Mhm.
really beautiful because she had already put a lot of work into it. So what
Oh,
we
work.
did
Yeah, a lot of
together,
work.
yeah, so and what happens is, when you work with a collaborative partner to help you work out that narrative, it opens up more courage, like more ability to be
Mhm.
more vulnerable.
Authenticity,
That's right, and then it
vulnerability, yeah.
changes, yeah, and then it changes the feel of the book and the tone and the style, because it really sounds more like you, and you would think that, "Oh, if I wrote the manuscript, that it sounds like me." But the
No.
fact is that most people get all hung up on, they're writing like, "What is everybody gonna think?"
Yeah,
Right?
they try to
And then
present, like, another version of themselves, right?
yeah,
It's not a lot of times, it's, like, not the authentic self. It's what people they think people want them to be, and it's not it doesn't feel it feels sometimes fake or false because it's, like, it's not really them. It's not so it might not connect, and that's why it seems like a ghostwriter is kinda like any creative person that helps another creative person, like an art teacher or a record
mhm.
producer or record engineer, like the person takes that raw feel and then said, I can get to bring out more. Like a conductor brings out the orchestra. Everybody knows everybody in the orchestra can play. It's the conductor that figures out how to get them to play it, to feel it.
That's right. And I'm no conductor of the symphony, but I would imagine if you take out a section here and a section here, and you're missing certain instruments, right? That it sounds incomplete. And so, part of what I do is I'm like, "Hey, we're gonna get really honest here. I'm gonna tell you," and it's like, I don't know, there's something more there, like, are you willing to share a little bit more depth here? Are you willing to go,
Mm,
and the level of depth that you share is equal to the level of depth that your audience and your readership is gonna actually be able to connect with you, and as
mhm.
scary as um, it is so, so cool when you say that thing that you wanted to say and you were too afraid to say it, but though that's the thing,
It
that's the
connects, yeah.
thing. It's the thing that goes, "Oh, your ideal audience, the people who you want to help, they listen when you go there. And hey, those who don't or aren't interested or don't like it, it's okay. You're not speaking to them. You're not speaking to
Yeah.
them. You can't speak to everybody, because I tried that so many times in my life. Got me
We try to be a
nowhere.
people pleaser. It's like the
Yeah,
people pleaser versus somebody like if you're a people pleaser, you're probably not doing anything you want to do at all. Right. You're trying to satisfy everybody else. Right. And so
yeah,
you're never gonna be your authentic self because there's like you don't think you have permission. So I think it's like a lot of times with a creator, like if you want to be like you, I read that you do like authentic storybook. So the authentic storybook
yeah,
is like that authentic, independent songwriter, right? You could
yeah,
have a singer, they have a 5 octave voice and they sing Burt Bacharach, and that's awesome, right? That's an awesome experience. But it's actually when you actually see somebody like a Joni Mitchell, and she wrote it. She actually wrote it. She
yeah,
wrote that song and she played that song, and that is her,
yep,
right? There's something about that that when you if you can get somebody to bring out that, then I think that's what people get connected to. That's what they feel like. Whoa, I know this person.
yes, absolutely. Every single person that you're drawn to that you don't know, you kind of feel like you know them because they shared something, I call it wildly authentic.
Mm,
And I love the word wild because for so much of my life, I was told, like, you
can't do
know,
that.
"You're too much," or like, "You're so wild," or "You're crazy," because I'm a bold personality. And I'm like, "Nah, wild's beautiful. It's natural. It's free." So, like, stop suffocating your larynx
Yeah, it's
and,
kind of
like,
like a
let it go, let it out. Yeah.
kind of a hippie aesthetic. It's kind of like a hippie aesthetic, like why I liked Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead and Frank Zappa and all that stuff because it felt like they didn't care. They would go play a song for 20 minutes because that's what they felt. Right? It
Yeah.
didn't care if they was going to be trying to make a hit. It's like it's not about making a hit. It was about connecting to what they
Mhm.
felt at the moment. So
Yeah.
if you can cut like what I call like that flow state. If you can get to a flow state and it doesn't feel forced, if you can like feel like you're getting the muse is coming through you. And even if you're a ghostwriter, if you see that muse that was in the original work, but you see there's missing pieces like that. You said the orchestra is missing a section
Yeah.
and you have that conversation with the person, right? And to get to that wildly authentic story, you get them to actually not be afraid to tell more.
Yeah. I've had people go really, really deep, like currently on my podcast, the Wild Larynx podcast. I'm gonna like tear up about this one, but she and I worked together to process her plant medicine experience with
Mm,
ayahuasca, and she went through some extremely, extremely traumatic events in her life. Um, Brother and sister both passed away within a short time of one another in very tragic ways. Um, Sexual trauma, a lot. And she came to me and said, I want to share this, the deepest, darkest, hardest things, because I know that I can help people see that there's another side to all of this.
mm,
And so she reveals, I mean, really, really big stuff. And it's all in the name of saying you're not alone
mhm,
and there's joy on the other side. And the fact is that storytelling, writing, even narrative work, it releases, I call it from stored to storied. There are all these
mhm.
things that, like, all these stories living in us. You think it's in your mind, but your emotions are stored all over your body.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's like,
Oh, yeah, and when you just go, even when you say that thing that you wanna say to somebody in your life, like, it feels really nerve-wracking. Maybe your central nervous system's going crazy, which I help people with that because 'cause I'm also a certified master health coach, so it makes a lot of sense why I learned all these things.
Hmm.
After you say it, the release that comes with that, like, sometimes you need, like, a couple days to digest actually, like, what
You gotta
just
shake it
happened.
off. You gotta shake it off. It's like an animal is shaking off, like people have forgotten how to shake off things, and I think also it's like the frequency. Like I'm a big believer in like, when people tell a story, you're talking. When you talk, those notes, it's not musical, but it could be. It's not
For
that
sure.
it's not that different. It's frequency, right? So I
Yeah.
feel that there are like these universal keys that you can connect to through like a law of attraction. So whether you're
Yes.
a speaker or a writer or poet or musician or painter, you can speak with frequencies, and visual stuff has frequencies, audio stuff has frequencies, and then there's frequencies from your heart and your body's giving out electricity. You get the vibe from somebody. They didn't even say anything. You get the vibe. So I think when you release that or are willing to accept the frequencies around you and process them and then figure out how to kind of be part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think that's how you get wild for me.
Yeah. I
you
love
know?
I love all your, like, metaphors and, like, analogies because I think that's really important. It's like, at one point in my life, my voice first of all, I hated the way my voice sounded. Did you ever hate that? People will say, "I hate the
Yeah.
way my voice sounds," right? I hated the way my voice sounded. I love the way my voice sounds now. I'm like, "Yeah, I sound great. I sound like myself." I'm like, in every version of myself, in every context or whatever, like, I'm free. But my voice sounded like an out of tune piano. It
Yeah.
sounded like it sounded like I was trying to say something, but I was like, scared to
Hung
say
up.
it, like, whether it
You're
was in
hung up on
business.
it. Yeah, hung up on
Yeah,
it,
like,
right?
in business as a woman who was often around men, I'd be sitting at the table, like, kinda like, like forcing, uh, this, like, trying to prove myself voice,
Mhm.
totally out of
It
tune.
sounds no, so it sounds strained. It was strained. It wasn't
Yeah.
you didn't
Yeah.
feel free. And I think what it comes to is as a musician, like I didn't sing for a long time. I didn't like my voice. And when I
Yeah.
first started singing, I actually treated my voice with all kinds of electronics to change it. And it took me years to accept my voice
Mm,
as it was because I didn't accept it. I had to keep on changing until I really finally grew into being comfortable with it. And that's it's about getting past that. And so, because you always have to get past it, because, like you said, if you're public speaking in a bunch of people, that people
mhm.
like are elders or people you think know more than you have to impress them. You get nervous. You get
Yeah.
nervous. You're not free. You end up trying to put a mask on. You end up trying to put it on, and then you don't feel authentic. It doesn't pass. It doesn't get over. You can't get it over because you're not being you. Because you're so scared of being you, you don't be. You're not you.
Yeah. Yeah, and you wonder, like, "Why isn't anybody listening to me? Because 'Cause you're an out-of-tune piano, you know? No one wants to I mean, people listened to me or they loved me or whatever that, great or respected me on a level, but they weren't hearing me. And we think, "Oh, because they're a bad listener." Well,
Hmm.
yeah, but you might also be an off key, out of tune,
Yeah.
instrument. You might be
Yeah,
missing
you
a
do
guitar
have to kind
string.
of you have to be a kind of aware of your surroundings. You have to have like a situational awareness. Like I've been
Mhm.
around people they're so into their like they wrote something down. They get to the room,
Yeah.
they read the room, and they kind of get the gut feeling they probably should change what they wrote, but they're like so tied to what they wrote, they
Mhm.
don't actually read the room. They
Yeah.
go and they do something that doesn't match where they are. And whatever you practice, it could be what you practice, but if you get to that moment and it doesn't fit, you kind of have to be able to be in that flow state and make it work. And I think that's where the kind of genius of people who are able to get in front of people is like, how do they do that? Because they learn how to read the environment. They know how to read themselves and the people around them and the room, the air, the feel.
Yes, and you get comfortable with yourself, like you said, and then you can get comfortable in any context, and I think there's something to it. I haven't done any research on this, but I think, like, sort of the adaptability or, like, agility, of like, when we're calm in our system and, like, confident and feel like then we can just kinda show up and
Hmm.
not pit ourselves against, like, you know, "What if I say this the wrong way or I forget that line?" Like you said, there's so much to say about emotions and feeling into the room, feeling into the person you're talking to, and then just, like, showing up, like, I just showed up here, right?
Yeah.
Like and
But
and
yeah,
here we
you
are.
gotta be you think about it, like, there are people who say, "Well, I would love to be a podcast guest, but I'm so scared of making a
Yeah.
mistake," right? So they
Mhm.
never click the button to try to be a guest because
Yeah.
it's like, "Well, I don't know what I should say, and I don't have the right mic, I don't have the" they give themselves all kinds of reasons. And the thing is, like, you have to be willing to make mistakes, to break the eggs, right? The first time you show up, it's not gonna go from 0 to 100% perfect.
Mhm.
And a lot of people can't accept it that that first time you do that thing you never did, that you're probably not going to do it that well,
Yeah.
right? That you're probably on the scale, you maybe hit 50, maybe hit 60, but you don't hit the 100. You get sometimes people right out the bat, they hit the 100, but that's not usually the case. But people are so scared of that, they don't even try.
Mhm.
It's like,
Yeah, and I think the way to well, I'll say for me, so I have had levels of anxiety for a long time. I didn't identify it until I was older, and then in the thick of the pandemic, it became so overwhelming. Prior to the pandemic, I got in front of rooms all the time. I was a little shaky. I would feel anxiety in my body, but I did it all the time and I knew what I was talking about and I felt really confident. Pandemic hits, I'm here inside all the time, like not in front of people. And I get this crazy level of anxiety, like insane, where I felt
mhm,
frozen. And I went to, at the time I was working with my startup and I went to like a in-person pitch practice. I had, like, a complete, like, anxiety attack, which people don't understand, and I had to leave because I didn't want people to see, like, exactly how that shows
mhm.
up, because it shows up in tears for me and, like, a bodily sort of release, and I'm saying this because I think for anyone listening, like, I just wanna say, like, keep showing up. And it
Mhm.
starts to break down because what you realize is that, like, people are amazing, and if you show up and you're not at your best or you mess up, guess what? You did it. Like,
Yeah,
you
you did
actually did it when everyone else is sitting at home and they're like, "I wish I could do that." You actually did it, so then you practice once and again, and, like,
it.
I have, like, virtually I mean, as far as, like, speak it or any of that, I have, like, no anxiety left.
Yeah. But
No
it's kinda
success.
like if you're an athlete, like, if you're an athlete, you practice that three-point shot, it becomes muscle memory. You're not gonna get anxious that there's a big crowd in the stadium and they're looking for you to mess up.
Yeah,
It's that you've done that. So that you're a musician, you played that piece, you know it. You don't
yeah,
even have to look at the page, you know it, right? So if you've got that kind of confidence, it comes from showing up. It comes from actually doing it. Like if you're gonna do anything, you kind of got to get that 10,000 hours, whatever, how many hours in. Once you
yeah,
get it in, then you should trust yourself. And
yes,
that's the problem I've run into people like you've been doing you know you might have been writing for 10 years but you still don't trust yourself. Well, you've got the capability, right? You're a public speaker, how long you do, but you still don't trust yourself. It's kind
mhm,
of like maybe you need to talk to the coach to figure out how to get past that. To have that law of attraction of like however many haters there are, there's that group of people that are going to love what you do. And
yeah,
you shouldn't get so obsessed about the couple of people who write about it and don't like it
mhm,
versus the new doors that open because you show it to the world.
yes. Yes, and I think so I always ask people, what is it when they start to work with me and they wanna write their book, I always say, "What is that thing that you really wanna say?" Say? Because I have NDA. Like, I have non-disclosure agreement. Whatever you tell me it is that you really wanna say,
You gotta worry about.
don't tell anybody. But it's a question that I ask because and I invite them to just, like, say it, like, blunt, like, "Don't worry, we'll work on what you really mean," right?
Hmm.
Because there's a fear of being misunderstood now that's bigger than ever,
Yeah.
especially with, like, leaders and stuff, because they're like, "If I actually say what I think, everyone's gonna get mad."
Yeah, the police are gonna come.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Well, look, let's break this down through different lenses so you can actually understand what it is you really want to say, because it may be that like you just haven't found the right words to be
Mhm.
properly understood and articulate with confidence that thing. And once you get that thing articulated in a way that feels really authentic and really like you, it's not so scary anymore,
Yeah,
you
it's
know.
like criticism. People are so scared of the criticism, and there's so many places it's coming from. From like it doesn't matter what your political spectrum is. Like there's like the left and the right and the middle. It's like people. It's like, well, this is the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And what I've always argued, like you think about the canon, like the literary canon. You
Mhm.
like you write and you're gonna write like Moby Dick. Like, but that's a classic, right? So if you think that's the canon and you want to be in that style, but if you go wildly away from that and you're in some class and everybody's supposed to be writing like that and you go off on a deviation, well, that's not real literature, right? So you've gone something outside the canon, so that people think it's wrong. Well, somebody's got to try something new, or you're just going to repeat what's been done in the past. And
Yeah.
so yeah, anybody who's on the bleeding edge always gets attacked for like why is that different? And it does take a level of courage to kind of be there just to be yourself because everybody wants you just to clone what's already there. You get people just
Yes.
doing AI prompts and it's like, well, this is what's been written before, so make it sound like that.
Yeah, I mean, I always have to steer not always, but I often have to steer people away from, like, um, too heavily, sort of, um, like, looking at what other people do or how their books read or what they're saying. I have to just constantly be like, "But this is your book, and what your vision and your, like, unique edge, and you can do it however you want." And my job is to help people, at least this is how I approach my work, is uncover, take the blinders off of, like, what
Mhm.
everyone else is doing, what everybody else would be happy if I said, what I should do for everybody else, and get them to, like, come from a place of, like, pure, like, "This is what I wanna say. This is why I wanna say it," and, like, get that thing out there, out of their system, out into the world, um, without pitting themselves against everybody else, or trying to be everybody else. Ugh, who wants that?
What
Same,
are, what
same,
are like
same us.
What are like 3 aspects of a high quality book? Like if you could they're probably more than 3, but just to break it
Mm.
down to 3, 'cause if you keep it simple, then it's not overwhelming. But if somebody wants to do a high quality book,
Mhm.
what are 3 like, pieces of that? What are points that would people would, just to look at it at a high level?
Yeah, I'm gonna say, storytelling, the storytelling aspect, um, getting that right, and when I say right, I mean emotional connection, with yourself, and then that's gonna happen automatically with your audience. Um, I also would say style, tone, the framework, because there's so many cool ways to put books together. There's not just like a cookie cutter, here you have to do it this
One
way.
way, the one
Yeah,
way,
so it's like, it's architecture, it's design, and
Mhm,
so I think that that's really important because it provides, like, with a framework, you get freedom to then create within that framework. So when you have a
mhm.
beautifully designed kind of narrative arc structure and framework. You can take the reader on this glorious journey, and then you just create within that framework. And I guess outside of what's inside of the book, there's the outside of the book.
Mm.
And I do really, really, really believe that outside of the book has to be just as extraordinary as the inside of the book. And if you don't have a book that you're proud of to sit, in 20 years, and it's, behind you, on your Zoom, and everyone's got it on their coffee table because it's such a beautiful book, and they want to pass it to you because it feels good.
Mhm.
I'm a person of like, I really like the way things feel,
Yeah, like,
and
yeah,
I'd say,
you wanna touch it. You wanna
yeah,
touch the actual item. Yeah,
yeah,
our piece of art. It's kinda hard in
totally.
a today's with, like, such a digital world, but it's the same
Mhm.
thing like if in music, like a vinyl record. Like a vinyl record versus
For
an
sure.
MP3 and a WAV file.
Yes.
If you have that vinyl record with the artwork and the liner notes, it's an experience beyond the song. It's more
Yes.
likely that the person who has that's actually gonna read the lyrics. The person that has that is gonna sit down and actually listen to the first side and the second side,
Yeah.
and just skipping around on a playlist and forget about it and not even dive into who you are as an artist.
Yeah, it's a sensory experience. Like, if you're actually reading the hardcover book or softcover book, the words and how they're designed inside of the book, that's engaging, your
Mhm.
senses, and you're holding something sensory, and so that to me is really important. And then in audiobooks, please, please train yourself and do it yourself. I really tell everyone that writes with me, I'm like, "We are
Oh,
gonna
do your
talk."
own narration? Do your own voice?
Yeah, yeah, and anyone who writes with me, I have them read to me, back
Mhm.
to me, and then when there's like a it doesn't quite, or if they're like, "No, I'm okay, I'll read it by myself," and I'm like, "Record the audio files, and you're gonna listen to them back, and anytime you hear something that's not like, it doesn't sound quite like you or natural, that's when we're gonna shape it, you
Work on
know."
it.
Yeah, and then through that process, they start to get, like, really, like, loving the audio part, which is
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really fun. And then I've been working with someone on Wildly Authentic Stories, the plant medicine work that we're doing, the storytelling work. Now it's audibly, present on the podcast, and he's so amazing. He's doing the sound behind her story.
Oh, there's music
It's
behind it?
really
Or is
cool.
music or just sound effects? Or is it both?
He's, like, playing with sound, but he's, like, so t talented because
Or like a
her
soundscape?
voice her voice sounds her voice is the focus. He's just making a, like, with sort of, like, ambient
Ambient
sound
music, yeah,
effects,
yeah, yeah,
and
soundscape,
yeah,
soundscape.
and then have you read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act?
Yeah, yeah, it's a great book.
Okay, so on his audio, I love it too. So it's kinda like this similar style, like, he's got a gong,
Oh,
between
I haven't
sections.
heard the audio, I should check that out, or
It's
I
great.
didn't check the audio. Yeah, I should.
It's great. Yeah. Yeah, so, like, that now audio is such a big way to share your book. So I would say that the quality in the audio matters as
Mhm.
much as the book
That's
itself.
interesting because 'cause I've had some people come on and say, "Oh, you should," and they might be pitching because they're actors, like, they're voice actors,
Mhm.
so they wanna pitch that they do it. But I
Yeah.
assume that's their livelihood, so they're either gonna pitch that. But
Oh, yeah, yeah.
so you gotta understand where somebody's coming from. It's like, what if you're an actor, of course you wanna do it. But if, like, somebody it's like the idea of the singer-songwriter. Bob
Yeah,
Dylan singing his own song, that's what the deal is, rather than somebody else singing the song. It's like if you wrote the book, if you can actually narrate it and do it, you can get into that full experience, and I
yeah.
think it would make you feel better because it's your full vision as an artist, right?
Yes, and authorship is artistry, and it's agency, it is ownership. I always play around with, like, authenticity, authorship, right? Like we, if I'm helping someone write their book, or I'm doing most of the writing, or maybe all of the writing, it's their voice and it's their words.
Yeah, yeah.
So I meet with them and transcribe everything. And then they're like, "Whoa, my words sound, are those my words?" And I'm like, "Yes,
Mhm.
you said that in the session." "I did?" I'm like, "Yeah. See the amazing things that come out of you, but that you can't even, hear yourself." So I'm just kind of like a catalyst for, kind of transmuting their words into writing sometimes. But yeah, so I mean, um, gosh, I don't know. I'm getting all hyper and
No,
lost on what
that's
I'm trying to say here. But yeah, I don't know. The whole experience, well, I guess like, we've been talking a lot about like how I guess like I ghostwrite. I honestly have no idea. Like, I mean, I do from like talking to other ghostwriters that are more like, you know, similar to me. But I don't know actually, like, exactly how they do it. I've never sat with another ghostwriter in their sessions. I don't
mm,
want to. I
yeah,
do it
because
my
you have
way.
your own stuff, because you have your own thing. You
Yeah, I
don't.
don't need to do it, like, as far as, like, I have an amazing guy who's, kinda stepped in to so generously. He's a very successful ghostwriter, and he, has been really generous with, like, kinda helping me with some things and sharing some tips and things with me. But there's no tip for intuition. There's no
Mhm.
tip for what you're just, like, naturally
Yeah.
inclined to do. So
It's
I
a
just,
natural creative yeah, it's kinda like when
yeah,
you ask a musician, like, "How do you write the song?" Right? And they can
right,
tell
right.
you how you wrote the song. It's kind of well, it's like, I'm a creator. So,
Mhm.
and each one comes a different way. So every
Yes.
project that comes to you, you might use different things. So it's like, it's usually not just one way, because like how
Yeah.
you heard something that moment triggered like your overall response is like, and you have the ability as a creative person to kind of pull what the inside and the outside and synthesize it and come up with the advice, or to come up with the what you're going to do. And it's so kind of, it's hard to explain to people because they want you to, oh, I want to put it into an algorithm, I want to
Yeah,
put it
I know.
into a, like, this is the top 10 things you do. It's like, well, it could be the top things, like 10 things I did for this thing, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's the top 10 things for the next thing.
Yep.
It might
Yeah,
not be translatable,
there's
it
no
might not, you don't know.
yeah, I mean, like, it's great to have, it's amazing to have, like, someone like me or a writing coach, coach you on the process and everything for sure. But, like, it's got to be in my opinion, in the way that I work and the the work that I help people do, carry out, it has to be highly personalized. It just is.
Mm,
And then on the other side of the spectrum, so I think, you know, as far as ghostwriters are concerned and like what to expect, there are like there's like this side and this side, right? Like there
mhm.
are people that will say, like if someone brings something to me and is like, "Here, write that." I'm like, "No."
You
No,
don't
we're
wanna
gonna
do
like
that.
work together. I wanna know you. Like,
You
we're gonna have
don't
some
wanna just
fun
take it and they
here.
walk away and they go to the south of France and come back and it's, like, done. They
Yeah,
don't
I'm
wanna
like,
talk to you. They, like, just take it and go with it.
yeah, then you gotta hire someone on, like, one of the platforms that, like,
Exactly.
less expensive, um, writers, ghostwriters hang out in those platforms, like, the people who are using more AI,
AI type of person
the
wants the
more,
AI to write the whole thing.
yeah, and I don't, like, I'm not saying anything, there's just a difference, right? It's not good or bad, it's different, and perhaps
It's a
that's
different, yeah, so it
fulfilling a need for something or somebody, but like,
yeah, well, it
um
depends, yeah, I guess you got people who are more hands-on, like, and if
right,
the project is their project, you would think they wanna be involved, but if you get somebody that says, "Well, just take it and walk away," well,
yeah,
they really don't wanna be kind of driving it. Because if they walk away, they're giving you like 100% control of like, this is what you got right now, and that's what you're gonna get. So everything you do is based on what you have in your hand right now, but no further discussion, no additional feedback or
Yeah.
input. So it's like, what is that? It's like if you're working with a record producer and you have the band in the studio with the producer and
Yeah.
they're there for 6 months. It's like a teacher, it's like a music teacher. They're gonna learn and it's gonna go back and forth. Versus
Yeah.
if you just give it to a guy and say, fix this track and I'll come back 6 months later. And I never call you and never talk to you.
I
Well, then
know.
he's
It's
gonna
it's
do whatever he's gonna do.
well, and it's funny because I mean, as a ghostwriter, like my name's not on anything, right? So like my name's not on your book. It's your name on the book. So you're hiring someone like me. I want to make you look great as you do.
Mhm,
As you do. But I want to help you and challenge you and engage you to really get into this process, but leverage to your strengths. You
mhm,
can save time, money, and energy, which is all the things that people want, right? Like, here, give this to me. I don't have the time. Of course, but you know what? You're gonna love this if I understand what it is you love to do in
yeah,
this process and like engage you in that. And then it's my favorite thing when someone says, like, I thought I was just coming to write a book. This is so much more fun than I thought.
yeah. Well, it's all
Mhm.
like you're showing up. It's kinda like you
Yeah.
gotta show up. Like if you're showing up and you gotta be involved, you have to give something of yourself.
Yes.
And when you're coming to a ghostwriter, I would think it's like, well, I'm not too confident in what I wrote,
Mhm.
and I think I
Yeah.
need some help. And if I want to learn to get to be a better writer, like what better opportunity to work with a ghostwriter who's going to listen to me and
Yes.
get the idea of what I'm trying to get across, and then
Mhm.
help me do that in
Yep.
a collaborative effort rather than like a top down. I'm going to be like the teacher with the red mark and the red mark everything and fix it. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily what you're doing. That's in nowhere near what you're doing.
No, and there's a lot of, one thing is like there is a lot of trust and it has to be automatic. And I tell people if you're not comfortable right away, if you don't feel trust enough with me to like, trigger my work, pay my fee and get started together, don't do it. Don't
Mhm.
do it because you're going to feel weird sometimes because like if you give me, you know, a bunch of things that you've already written and you give me I mean, I've had clients give me like 20 books that inspire them, right? So you send me 20 books that I'm kind of exaggerating, but almost,
Yeah, yeah,
you send me all of that, you send me your whole, Google folders with, like, tons of stuff in it, or you just, like, piles of paper, whatever it is, the material that exists. I have to get to know you, and I also have to go through because I respect you and care about what you think, how you
mhm,
feel, and the time and energy you've already spent to put into this material. Please allow me the time to go through it with my best
yep,
attention
mhm,
so that then we've got the foundation where our relationship goes beyond the final manuscript. I always tell people that. Like, you can call me after the final manuscript is over, and I'm not gonna charge you money. You can call me and say, "Oh my god, like, I'm really nervous. My book is, whatever, in the airport." What a like, because there's different phases, right?
yeah,
Where
yeah,
then it's another level of courage or vulnerability or whatever. So, like, allowing you should always expect a ghostwriter if you're writing a book and you want something of quality and meaning, you should expect them to take time with what exists. Um, it's
mhm, yeah.
honestly
You got to process
disrespectful
it.
if you don't. Yeah,
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 but that must be a problem today with the instant gratification kind of. If you look at like social media, people
mhm,
want instantaneous response. people want, like, I want 10 steps, I'm going to solve everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, like, anything that's worthwhile takes time. Like, if you're writing, if you're trying to create a really good piece of art, it could happen overnight, but a lot of times that's not the case. Usually
Yeah.
it's a process that comes from synthesizing a bunch of different things and starting here and starting there. And then eventually, like, it's not that you made mistakes, but these are the things that lead up to the final piece.
Yes.
And so, like, that's usually not going to happen from 0 to 100 all at once. And
Yeah,
it
and I
might be an
think
expectation today, but people want that super quick.
yeah, and when you're when you get into the writing part of it and you're like, because I look at like, I'm doing most of the writing, then they're going in and saying, "Oh, I like this," or "I want to change that," and blah blah blah. There's fervor. We're working. Um, it is necessary to take a break, Whew, like
Yeah.
because your mind gets so deep into the work that then you can't read it with a fresh,
Yeah,
mind.
you have
So
to
I
walk
love
away.
to yeah, I love to take little pause and like, "Hey, let's pause and, like, totally forget this book for," maybe it's a few days, maybe it's a month, it
Mhm.
depends,
Yeah, it's dependent.
and then go back to it, and of
It's a
course, in the last
fresh look. It's a fresh set of ears or
yeah,
eyes. We do that in music all the time because you could be working on a track and you get too crazy and you
yeah,
worked on it for a month
yeah,
every day, and then it's like, you gotta walk away to go away. Go
yeah,
away. Don't even listen to it. Don't look at it. Don't even think about it. Then come back, and then you come back, it's like, wow, you get that different perspective by walking away and coming back.
for
And a lot of
sure.
times you need that perspective, like all kinds of art. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what type of art it is. It's like I've talked to tons of different types of artists, and you do need to kind of do that to get perspective. Because sometimes you can get so focused that you don't see the big picture.
Yeah. Yeah, I was working out in a business book with this great client. He's so awesome, and he's always into like, "Yeah, like, let's take our time and then come back to it." So we're hustily looking, but his framework that we came to the to create, his vision is like a, it's a little bit brainy. Like, it's not gonna be
Oh
presented
yeah,
that
it's a
way
little
to the
heavy.
reader, but it's a little bit of it's like quite a lot of, like, because it's very original, it's really cool,
Mhm.
and it's really original. And, like, I was like, "Okay, we gotta have a digestion period," I have to and then you can go back and, like, actually be really honest about, "Is this good?" And it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
fun recently, and I don't always think that. I'm like, "Ooh, God, what was I doing there? I've gotta, finesse this or this doesn't quite, compute." But going back to his recently, um, I was like, "Ooh, this is good," and I loved, like, that feeling of kind
Yeah.
of separating from it because when I got so thick in it that I was like, "Am I doing a good job here? Like, is this good?" And then I
Yeah.
had to separate from it and come back, and I was like, "Yeah, I would read this, this is fun." But yeah, you can't see that when you're thick in it. Any art, I think, anything you
Yeah.
create, yeah.
So what you do called, like, developmental narrative work, or is
That's
that
what
just
I
another
call
part
it.
of it? Yeah.
I call it that because what I realized was that I go beyond ghostwriting, and it's not always ghostwriting, It just depends on it's kinda like, it's like a marriage of all things that depending on who you are and what you need I have clients that love to write.
Mhm.
So, I'm like and maybe they don't wanna take as much time, but they love to write. So I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'll do some of this, take the legwork off of you, but then why don't you get in there and write, in
Yeah.
periods of time?" So, it's not to me, it's not like one or the other, it's always kinda like a combination.
Yeah, it's
Um,
very
yeah,
whole.
so
A lot of things is like, it's a lot of things today, it's like not one thing or the other thing, it's like a lot of things in a
yeah,
like multi, genre, like multi
Mhm.
capability, right? So there's a lot of times people want to get pigeonholed and it's like, well, it's just this, it's just this. A lot of
Yeah.
things are not just this. A lot of times things are amalgamations of multiple things, and you could be, you could be presenting something that is a hybrid. It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a lot of times people want to pin it down. They want to say, well,
Yes.
it's just this, and it's hard. It's very rare when something's just that. It usually came from something that might not be exactly that, but I think that's the fun to me, is to mix things up. Like, I
Yes.
like to mix genres, like jazz and punk.
Oh,
You
cool.
you you
Ooh, that's
wouldn't,
fun.
like, why would you do, well, yeah, but that's cool because why not put a punk aesthetic with jazz?
Yeah, why not?
So that comes, in some cases, you could say that, fusion jazz, that was kind of punk anyway. So why not? It is kind of that way. So why not come at things like that? And it's not wrong. Maybe some people will think it's wrong, but
Yeah.
you just do it because if that's what you feel, that moment deserves what you're into. You should go with what you feel your gut feels. And it's kind of like the artistic thing, to go with your gut.
Yes.
Sometimes that's hard because people don't want to do that because they be kind of trained
Mhm.
not to.
Yes. Yes. Well, and a lot of people will go, "I need a ghostwriter." And then, I get on the call and I'm like, "Okay, tell me why you think you need a ghostwriter." And what they actually need is a creative partner. They actually need
Mhm.
somebody to bounce ideas off of. They might need a little writing. They might need a little coaching. So so it's not always like what they think they need. But a lot of people are like, ghostwriting, they feel like they know what that is, you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
And a
yeah.
lot of people just are like, "I don't wanna write." And, but then I feel like, well, if I'm gonna capture someone's tone, voice, style, and they don't wanna write, well, then I need to hear them speak. I
Yeah, you gotta
need to
hear it.
feel
Yeah.
that out, and that's where, like, the narrative artistry comes through because it's not just like, "Okay, talk and tell me in a session and answer these questions and goodbye."
Mhm.
It's not like that. It's like, "Okay, now
It's an
here's the writing."
ongoing kinda
Yeah,
it's an
it's
ongoing collaborative session to get the feel, right? You want the feel of what that project's gonna be,
yeah,
and the only way to get the feel is to actually, push on it. Like when you push with any artist, it's like, what are you trying to do? Right? If you're
mhm,
if you're a producer, like, what are you trying to do? What what
yep,
what mood are you trying to convey? What feelings are you trying to get your audience to get out of this? What do you
mhm,
what's the point? Like, if you get, so a lot of times, like, if you get to the artist and you ask them, like, why are you doing it? Like, why are you doing this piece? What's the motivation of why are you passionate about it? What is it you're trying to get across?
mhm,
And if you start pushing on it, then you can get people mad, or they start saying, it's like, well, it's not apparent. It's like, maybe not. So it's
yeah.
like, maybe you have to kind of get people to clarify where they are.
So, yes, and I'm asking you this question because it relates exactly to what you just said. Do you know who Kenny Beats is?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know who he is.
Okay, so have you listened to his album Louie?
I don't think I read that. I haven't heard that one. I've heard a bunch of work he's done, though, but
Oh my god. So, like, I'm listening to him on it might have been Rick Rubin's podcast, I'm not sure, because I had heard a song by Kenny Beats, and it was off of the Louis album, and it was with, I think her name is Remy Wolf.
yeah, Remy Wolf, I know her
Oh
stuff. Yeah, my
god,
daughter's my daughter's into her big time.
oh my god, I heard this song and I was like, "What?" I was like, "This is so good," and so I got into the Louis album and I'm like, what is this album? It's so cool. So it turns out that he basically, from what I recall him kind of talking about, his father had been diagnosed with cancer and he like
Mhm.
recorded his father and did this whole album in this like really alternative way that's not like made for like, more commercial
Yeah,
consumption or, whatever. And, like, in the process, like, the top music people in the industry were like, that's what's going to get you, the work that's going to result in, the bigger projects. And he said it in so many other words, but I was so inspired by that because it was like, he just came from zero interest in like, is this going to make me money? Is
Yeah,
this
yeah. Or like
you know,
the real artistic, like,
uh,
the kind of thing I was always into with like progressive rockers,
yeah.
like the early Yes, Procol Harum and a lot of stuff from the 60s. I'm big time in, Parliament Funkadelic. A lot of
Mhm.
I like, Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. I mean, that stuff that wasn't super commercial, but it had an impact on other artists because it was so the critics love it. Like there's some stuff that never really sold, right? Lou Reed
Yeah.
stuff, like with Development, like, but it inspired tons of other producers to say, "Wow, that's the feel I want. I want that Lou Reed Velvet Underground feel." So
Ooh.
that's why a
Yeah.
lot of alternative producers in the 80s and 90s, they were all name checking Lou Reed and saying that that's where I'm coming from. That's
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do. And he wasn't commercially successful with that Velvet Underground stuff, but it inspired tons of other artists who were commercially successful.
And Stephanie says that song is on what album is it? Sorry. I'm like, a song with the name Stephanie. No, I love Lou Reed.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but
It's
yeah,
amazing.
well, and the thing is that like that's a great example of like, again, you just come from a place of your art. You're not coming from a place. You're coming from a place of like not trying to people please.
Yeah, you just do it. You
A
put
place
it
of
out
being
there, and it
yeah.
does inspire people. I love the story of William Blake, one of the great Victorian poets. I mean, and he was not known in his time. The songs of Innocence and Experience were not Victorian poet hits at the time. They're not. He wasn't known. He was known
Mhm.
after because he put his stuff on metal plates, and as
Yeah.
every single poem has a picture behind it, and it was found in like a farmhouse after he
Wow.
died. I mean, he became one of the great Victorian poets because he wrote in the era, and then people said, "Wow, this work is amazing." But he had the presence of mind. He wasn't good at marketing, but he had the presence of mind to etch those poems in metal in acid, thinking that they were important. So it's kind of like, you have as an artist, you should think your work is important enough to put it out there in some way to get it into their world.
Yes. Without I think it's kinda like entrepreneurship actually, like, when you're building a startup business or a business company, you've got a company, it's like, put yourself in the process, don't get too hung up on the result because expectations kill, sort of kill joy, honestly, and then they kinda keep making you think like, "Oh, it's not happening in the way that I want it to," whatever. So I do think it's like if you create something thing and then focus hyper on like who's paying attention, how many like likes am I getting, how many subscriptions am I getting, blah 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 blah. Like you're gonna kill the
Yeah,
soul of the
yeah,
project.
well, a lot of people stop.
Like,
That the big how
yeah,
many
or
people
stop.
in
Thank
this
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
in this age, if they don't get 1,000 likes, if
Yes.
they don't get on the algorithm, if they don't get on the playlist, then they stop. Like
Exactly.
Lou Reed didn't get on the playlist, like, back in the day. He didn't really push it until Bowie helped him with Walk on the Wild Side, and then he got bigger. But,
Yeah.
like, from 66 to, like, 72, he wasn't doing that well, but he kept on doing it because he felt like it was important to put his art out there. And I think you have to kinda get to that point where now not that you gotta be a starving artist, and some people think that's a badge of honor. It's not that you wanna be the starving artist, it's like that you feel the art because it's in you. And,
Mhm.
and you put it out there, and you throw it at the wall, you put it into the world. And if you can find somebody like yourself to help you do it better, and this is like one of the things that you tell people, it's like you're into the art, maybe you need somebody to help you.
Yeah.
Maybe you need somebody like,
Yeah.
Stephanie to come to help you, and then that will get you there. But don't be scared of actually starting
Right.
that journey, right?
Everyone has, I mean, everybody should have always in all areas of their life, a guidance system or people who will actually be truthful with them, people who will help them. people who will hear them for real, before anyone else does, right? I mean, like music. Do many people do that alone?
No,
I
it's
mean,
a
you look at a
collaborative
music
effort.
studio. Yeah, but I mean, like, like from the outside in, and like, you look at when I always think it looks so fun to be in a music studio with like a couple of people just like creating. It just looks so fun. And I have been in a music studio before, but like, gosh, I want to do that more, right? But
Yeah.
like,
Well, you
then
just have
people go to
it's
write a
like
book.
Candyland. Well, it's
Yeah,
like Candyland. Like you have all your instruments, you have all your tools,
so
you have all this
fun.
stuff. So it's like it's like the dreamland. It's like a
Yeah.
filmmaker that's got a camera. It's full of film, and he's ready to shoot. Right? He's ready to go. He's got the lighter people with the lights, and he's got all the stuff. You got the screens. He can create the environment. Like that's what a musician. We have all these tools, and we create these sound paintings. Like I
Yeah.
call them sound paintings, like because like we're trying to create like a story. We're telling a story, and the audio is actually enhancing the words, so you get the feel. Whether you feel like the drama, the pain, the melancholy, the
Mhm.
passion, the happiness, you can feel it because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell a story within a certain finite amount of time, not as long as a novel, not as long as a book, but we're telling a story.
Mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel like, that should sort of be the angle of authorship. Like you have this whole amazing kind of collaborative experience. The book is yours. It's your vision. It's your mission on your value system with like, this this group of people or one person or whatever. But people walk away and they're like, I'm writing my own book, and that's cool. Like, that's
Cool.
cool. But like when I wrote my own book, I was like doing the audio files and then I would send it. Like, I would actually send it out to friends. I just did. I was like, I don't care. I want to know what they think. And like I needed to connect.
Yeah, I
I
get
wanted
that
to
beta
connect.
reader kind of feedback, but you need
Yep.
that kind of. That's why people have beta readers, right? That's why you
Well,
have
that's yeah,
folks that listen to your demo or folks that watch your film.
that's
Like
right. Oh,
before it hits, you have the people who kind of give you that beta read
I'm
because you
so
want to
glad
get
you brought this up actually,
right. You gotta get
because
better,
this
right?
'cause this is what people do. I mean, when I was doing that, I'm accustomed to throwing myself out there and stuff, so I was and these are, like, some of my super close friends. They're actually some of the, like I wrote, like, love stories. I wrote about, like, sex and love and relationships and stuff, and then understanding of self through those experiences. But I actually sent them to some of the men that were in the book, like so it was kind of a fun little experiment for me, and I
Mhm.
didn't, but the thing that happens sometimes is that people start to share their work right away with, like, the wrong people,
Mm,
and then, like, they're like, "Oh, so and so didn't like it," and I'm like, "It's not, like, that's not it's not quite there yet, and that's not actually the person to send it to." So,
yeah,
like,
you need a beta
the ones
reader.
who
Yeah,
curate the
somebody that's
right
like yeah, that's somebody
yeah,
that's like more willing to do that than like if you send it to your best friend and they're not like a beta reader type and they're not used to seeing your work, they
yeah.
they might give you such a feedback that you're so down and you don't give up.
Yeah,
You
or actually the worst is the worst thing that happens isn't like well, okay, 2 things. People will just go, "Oh, I like it. That's great. That's great. It's great. It's great,"
oh
because they don't wanna
oh
tell you
so
the truth, or they don't
yeah,
wanna
but
give you any, like, deep feedback, or they don't read it at all. And, it's really heartbreaking. It's been heartbreaking for a couple of my clients have been like, "I sent it to my family and they don't even read it," you know? And I'm like, "It's okay. They're not," and they'll, like, send it, prematurely, so they're still in the process of creating it, and then it kinda gets them down, right? Like, that they don't have
mhm,
anything interesting to say. I'm like, "No, no, 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 it's just that people's attention, it's hard to capture these days,
yeah,
and
it's
you gotta
difficult.
go the right people will read it and will give you the right feedback and, all that kinda stuff, but that takes some thought and strategy and work and things. So,
Well,
yeah.
but we've hit our hour mark, and I do
We went over,
love
thanks.
and we always go over. It was such a good conversation. So Yeah, I just want to let people know that this will be out there on all the platforms that you can listen to or watch a podcast. We have been on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. And I want to thank you for being on the podcast. It was a great conversation, and it will be widely distributed on all those other platforms by tomorrow. And I do thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun to talk to you.
Thank you.